January 20th, 1907, Volume 7. The greatest sanctity is to live in the divine will. Having read the lives of two female saints, one who aspired so much to suffering, and the other who aspired so much to be little, I was thinking in my interior about which one of the two it would be better to imitate, and unable to make up my mind, I felt as though hampered. So, in order to be free and to think only about loving him, I said to myself, I want to aspire to nothing but to love him and to fulfill his holy will perfectly. At that moment, the Lord told me in my interior, and it is here that I want you, in my will. Until the grain of wheat is buried in the earth and dies completely, it cannot rise again to new life and multiply itself, giving life to other grains. In the same way, until the soul is buried in my will, to the point of dying completely, by dissolving all of her will within mine, she cannot rise again to new divine life through the rising of all the virtues of Christ, which contain true sanctity. Therefore let my will be the seal which seals your interior and exterior. And once my will has risen completely within you, you will find true love, and this is the greatest of all the other sanctities to which one can aspire. January 20th, 1912, Volume 10. When love does not obtain the intent with good manners, it tries to obtain it with huffs, with fusses, and even with holy naughtiness. As my always lovable Jesus returned, he continued to make himself seen while clasping hearts, and as souls resisted those squeezes, grace would remain inoperative. And Jesus would take this grace in his hand and bring it to those few who were letting themselves be squeezed. He brought a good part of it also to me. On seeing this, I said to him, "My sweet life, you have been so good with me in letting me share in the grace which others refuse. Yet I feel no squeezes. On the contrary, I feel so very wide, so much so that I am unable to see either the width or the height or the depth of the boundaries in which I find myself." And Jesus, "My beloved daughter, my squeezes are felt by one who, not letting herself be squeezed thoroughly by me, cannot enter to live in me. But one who lets herself be squeezed by me as I want, already passes to living in me, and by living in me, everything is wideness. Constraints no longer exist. All the constraint lasts for as long as the soul has the patience to let herself be squeezed by me, to the point of undoing the human being in order to live in the divine life. But then, as she passes to living in me, I keep her safe. I let her wander throughout my endless boundaries. I no longer need to use bonds. On the contrary, many times I myself have to force her so as to put her out a little, to let her see the evils of the earth, to make her plead with greater yearning for the salvation of my children, and have them spared the deserved chastisements. And she is on tenterhooks, and pushes me, for she wants to enter into me, lamenting, saying that the earth is not for her. How many times have I not done this with you? I had to show myself huffy and fussy to make you stay a little bit at your place. Otherwise you would not have lasted 1 minute outside of me. My heart knows what I suffered in seeing you outside of me, wriggling about, struggling, crying. While the others do this so as not to be squeezed, you did it so as to live in me. And how many times have you yourself not become huffy and fussy because of this way of mine of operating? Don't you remember that we have also been in a fight? And I, yes, I remember. The day before yesterday precisely, I was about to get upset because you put me outside of yourself, and as I saw you crying over the evils of the earth, I cried together with you, and the huffiness went away. You are truly naughty, O Jesus. Don't you know that you are naughty, little naughty one? But of love. In order to give love and to receive love, you arrive at naughtiness. Isn't it true, Jesus? After a huff or a fuss that we take with each other, don't we love each other more? And he, certainly, certainly, it is necessary to love to be able to comprehend love. And when love does not obtain the intent with good manners, it tries to obtain it with huffs, with fusses, and even with holy naughtiness. January 20th, 1922, Volume 13. What the soul who lives in the divine will should do with her rags. I was all concerned with the addition that I saw myself as so bad that only Jesus can know the miserable state of my soul. And my sweet Jesus, all goodness, came and told me, "My daughter, why do you oppress yourself? Do you know how one's own things are in my will? They are like miserable rags and tatters, which give more dishonor than honor to the soul, and remind her that she used to be a poor one, and possessed not even one garment that was whole. When I want to call a soul into my will, that she may establish her residence in it, I act like a great lord who would want to take one of the poorest women into his palace, so that, laying down her clothes of poor, she may be clothed according to his same condition, living together with him and sharing in all of his goods. Now, this lord goes around all the streets of the city, and as he finds one of the poorest women, homeless, without a bed, covered only with filthy rags, he takes her and brings her to his palace as a triumph of his charity. However, he orders her to lay down her rags, to clean herself, and to clothe herself with the most beautiful garments, and in order to keep no memory of her poverty, to burn her rags. In fact, since he is extremely rich, he does not admit anything in his house which may recall poverty. Now, if the poor one sadly misses her rags and afflicts herself because she has brought nothing of her own, would she not offend the goodness, the magnanimity of that Lord? So I am. And if that Lord goes around one city, I go around the whole world, and maybe all generations. And wherever I find the littlest, the poorest one, I take her and place her in the eternal sphere of my volition, saying to her, "Work together with me in my will. What is mine is yours. If you have something from your own, lay it down, because in the sanctity and in the immense riches of my will, it is nothing but miserable rags." Wanting to have one's own merits is of servants, of slaves, not of children. What belongs to the Father belongs to his children. Besides, what are all the merits that you could acquire compared to one single act of my will? All merits have their own little value, weight, and measure. But who could ever measure one single act of my will? No one. No one. And then, what are your merits compared to mine? In my will you will find them all, and I make of you the owner. Aren't you happy? Listen, my daughter, I want you to leave everything aside. Your mission is immense, and more than words, it is acts that I expect from you. I want you to be in continuous act in my will. I want the strolling of your thoughts in my will, which strolling over all human intelligences may lay the mantle of my will over all created minds, and rising up to the throne of the Eternal One, may offer all human thoughts sealed with the honor and the glory of my divine will. Then lay the mantle of my will over all human gazes, over all words, as though placing your eyes and your words in a stroll over all of their gazes and words, and sealing them with my will, rise before the Supreme Majesty once again, and offer the homage as if all had used the sight and the speech according to my will. In the same way, if you work, if you breathe, if your heart beats, may your strolling be continuous. Your path is extremely long. It is all eternity that you must cover. If you knew how much you lose with one stop of yours, and how you deprive me, not of a human honor, but of a divine honor. These are the merits which you should fear of losing, not your rags and your miseries. Therefore, more attention in doing your runs in my will. January 20th, 1924, Volume 16. The only refreshment in the privation of Jesus is to wander more in the divine will. The divine will is a sea of light and of fire, in which one cannot stop, but needs to go around continuously in order to take everything in every instant. I was in the hard state of the usual privations of my beloved good, and I felt immersed in bitterness, deprived of He who alone makes sun, warmth, smile, and happiness arise in my poor soul. Without Him it is always night-time. I remain numb with cold of His privation. I am unhappy. So I felt oppressed. And my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, courage. Do not abandon yourself prey to oppression. If you knew how much I suffer in seeing you suffer. I suffer so much that, in order not to see you suffer so much, I put you to sleep. But I remain close to you. I do not leave you. And while you sleep, I do for you what we should be doing together, if you were awake. Because it is not you who want to sleep, but it is I who want it, and so I make up for you. Do you see how much I love you? If you knew how much I suffer when I see you wake up and fidget, because you have not realized that I was close to you, since I myself had put you to sleep in the torment of my privation. It is true that you suffer. I too suffer. But it is the bond of my will which flows in you also in this, and clasping you more, renders our union even more stable. Therefore courage, and remember that you are the little boat of my will, and the divine will is not a sea of water, which has its ports and shores, where boats and ships and passengers make their stops, where they rest, have a good time, and many passengers don't even return to cross the sea. The sea of my will is sea of light and of fire, with no port and no shore. Therefore there are no stops for my little boat. She must cross it continuously, but with such speed as to enclose the whole unending eternity in each one of your heartbeats and acts, in such a way as to connect them to that eternal heartbeat and act, which is heartbeat and act of everyone. And you, crossing over all, will go around eternity at each one of your heartbeats. You will take everything, and will bring us all that comes from the divinity, in order to give and to receive, but which gives without receiving. And my little boat has the task to cross the immense sea of my will, in order to give us return of all that comes from us. So if you oppress yourself, you will lose attention in the round, and the sea of my will, not feeling shaken by the fast rounds of my little boat, will burn you even more, and you will fidget even more because of my privation. But if you keep going around, You will be like that sweet little breeze, which, bringing refreshment to my fire, will serve you to sweeten the torment you suffer because of my privation. January 20th, 1927, Volume 20. How the communion of the divine will is not subject to be consumed. Its veils are intangible. The soul longs for heaven, and therefore she is sad, and puts all creation in sadness. Having received Holy Communion, I remained afflicted and distressed, because the fits of coughing were such and so many that I felt I was suffocating, and I could neither think nor be with Jesus according to my usual way. Then, after 1 hour and more of intense coughing, I calmed down, and I thought to myself, it has already been an hour and more since I received Jesus, and I have not been able to recollect myself to be all alone with him. The accidents of the host are already consumed. Jesus has left, and I do not know where else to find him again. So today for me it has been as if I had not received Holy Communion. But after all, also in this I kiss, I adore, and I bless the Supreme Fiat. Now, while I was thinking of this, my sweet Jesus came out from within my interior, leaned his head on my shoulder, and sustained me with his arms to give me strength, for I was so exhausted that I felt I was dying. And all goodness, he said to me, "My daughter, do you not know that there is a communion which is eternal, so great, and not subject to either diminish or be consumed? Its veils, which hide it in the midst of creatures, are not subject to perish like the veils of the sacramental host. It gives itself in every instant, at each breath, at each heartbeat, and in all circumstances. Even more, one must be always with her mouth open to be able to receive them all, that is, with the will of always wanting to receive this communion so great and continuous that as much as it gives itself, it is not subject to either diminish or be consumed. Otherwise many times they remain outside of the soul without entering into her. You have already understood what this communion so great and continuous is. It is my divine fiat, which flows as life within your soul, as heat to fecundate you and to make you grow, as food to nourish you. It flows in the blood of your veins, in the heartbeat of your heart, in everything. It is always in the act of giving itself to you alone, if you only want to receive it. It would drown you with communions, so many it wants to give to you. With reason, with justice, and by right, the communion of my will was to be without limits, and not subject to be consumed, because it is origin, means, and end of the creature, and therefore she was to be able to receive it in such a way that it could never be lacking to her. In fact, something which is origin, means, and end must be in continuous act of giving itself, and of being received. If it were not so, her origin of living, and the means to maintain herself, would be lacking for the poor creature, and she would lose the end she must reach. Therefore my infinite wisdom could never have allowed that the communion of my will be limited for them. The sacramental communion, instead, was not given as origin of creatures, nor as end, but it was given as means, help, refreshment, and medicine. And the means, the helps, and so forth, are given in a limited way. They are not perennial. This is why the veils of the sacramental accidents are subject to be consumed. More so, since if the creatures love to receive me continuously, there is the great communion of the eternal fiat, which is in act of giving itself continuously to them. Yet you were afflicting and almost troubling yourself, as you were thinking that the sacramental species were consumed? You had no reason to afflict yourself, because inside and outside of you there is the communion of my will, which is not subject to undergo any consummation. Its life is always in its fullness, nor could my love tolerate that the little daughter of our will be unable to receive our divine life, always new and continuous. Then after this I continued to feel sick, and while doing the round in the creation to follow the acts of the Supreme Will, I felt a note of sadness in me, because obedience had imposed on me to obey letting my sickness be taken away, while I was longing for heaven. I would have wanted to make a jump from the middle of creation in order to reach my yearned-for fatherland, praying the heavens, the stars, the sun, and all created things to accompany me. In fact, since one was the Fiat that gave us all life, I had my right that they should not leave me alone, but should all follow me up to the eternal gates, waiting for that very will which had possessed me on earth to receive me in heaven. And then after my entrance into this beatific celestial will, they could withdraw, each one to its place. But unable to do this, I felt sad, and in this way I went around the whole creation. Now while I was doing this, a loud, harmonious, and silvery voice made itself heard from the center of creation, saying, "Your sad note communicated itself to all created things. So today you have put us all in sadness. Be sure that we will all accompany you to heaven. It is right that one who has been in our midst, who has kept us company, may not enter heaven without our company. But all creation will remain without the one who gives it joy, who keeps it in feast. Your echo will no longer resound in our midst, by which rendering us as though speaking, we magnify, love, and praise that divine will which created us and which preserves us." The voice kept silent, and I myself felt I was breathing a sad air. Then I thought I had committed sin for having put the whole creation in sadness with my sadness. So I yearned for my sweet Jesus to tell him of the evil I had done, and to tell him that he had made me write so many things regarding the divine will, so that these might reach into the midst of creatures, in such a way that, by living of this divine fiat, they might possess a kingdom so holy. Then, while I was thinking of this and of other things, my beloved Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, you are right in wanting to come. But before all the knowledges of my will come out and take their course, it will take time. And this is why the creation is right in saying that it will remain in its silence once again. However, I do not want you to oppress yourself. Abandon yourself in me and let your Jesus do everything. And my love, when you take me to heaven, I pray that you take me quickly, quickly, so that they may not have the time to give me this obedience." But while I was saying this, I seemed to see the heavens, the sun, and all creation bowing around me to pay homage. And Jesus added, "My daughter, when you die, the whole creation will invest you, and you will pass into heaven in a flash. Aren't you happy?" January 20th, 1929, Volume 25. How Creation is a Divine Army. Wherever the divine will is present, there is perennial life. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues, and as I was following its acts that it did in the whole creation, I wanted to give to my Creator the glory that each created thing contained. In fact, even though each created thing is glorious, noble, holy, of divine origin, because it is formed by the creating fiat, however, each thing possesses a property, one distinct from the other, in such a way that each of them gives its own glory to he who created it. So while my little and poor intelligence was wandering within the creation, my sweet Jesus, moving in my interior, told me, "My daughter, each created thing has its special office, according to how God created it, and all of them are faithful to me in the office that each one possesses, giving me continuous glory, and each distinct from the other. The creation is my divine army, united and inseparable, though created things are distinct, and all of them run without ever stopping for the sole purpose of glorifying their Creator. It is like an army. Some act as general, some as captain, some as officer, and some as little soldier, all intent on serving the king, each one at its place, in perfect order and faithful to the exercise of each office. As each created thing possesses an act of my divine will, this is enough for them to maintain themselves in their place in perfect order, always beautiful and ever new, and in the act of glorifying He who created them. Wherever my divine will is present, there is perennial life, harmony, order, unshakable firmness, such that no event can move them from their place, and all are happy in the office that each possesses. Such would man have been if the human will had not snatched him away from my will. A beautiful army, all ordered and each one happy in his office, and always in the act of glorifying me. And while glorifying his Creator, he would remain glorified himself. This is why I want my divine Fiat to return to reign in the midst of creatures, because I want my army, all ordered, noble, holy, and with the imprint of the glory of their Creator. January 20th, 1930, Volume 27. How beautiful is the living in the divine will. The soul places God in the condition of repeating his works. How the divine Fiat acts as actor and spectator. I was doing my round in the divine will, and I arrived at that point when the Queen of Heaven was created, and the divinity laid down the garments of justice, and as though putting on the garments of feast, it renewed the solemn act of the beginning of creation, calling to life the noble creature who, by living in the divine will, the only purpose for which God had created man, would not go out of the house of her Father, because only our human will puts us outside of God, of his dwelling, outside of his goods, of his sanctity, of his light. In creating the Holy Virgin, God resumed the feasts of creation, his sweet smiles, his holy conversations with the creature, and he overflowed with love so much that immediately he made her queen of the whole universe, commanding everything and everyone to honor her as such, and prostrate at her venerable feet, recognize her and sing her praises as queen. So according to my usual way, I was singing the praises of my mother queen, hailing her, in the name of all, Queen of heaven and earth, Queen of hearts, and celestial empress, who rules over everything, and even in her Creator. "Oh, please," I was saying to her, "with your universal empire rule over all, so that the human will may surrender the rights to the divine will. Rule over our God, that the divine Fiat may descend into the hearts and reign in them on earth as it does in heaven." Now, while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and united himself with me in singing the praises of the celestial Mamma as queen, and clasping me to himself, told me, "My daughter, how beautiful is the living in my divine will. It keeps, as though present, everything that has been done by God, and the creature finds everything that her Creator has done, and takes part in his works, and can render to her Creator the honors, the love, the glory of that act. It can be said that one who lives in our divine will places us in the condition of renewing our most beautiful works, and makes herself the renewer of our feasts. The creation of the Virgin says in clear notes what our divine will means and what it can do. As soon as it took possession of her virgin heart, we did not even wait 1 minute, but immediately we made her queen. It was our will that we were crowning in her, because it was not befitting for a creature who possessed our will not to have the crown of queen and the scepter of command. Our divine will wants to hold nothing back. It wants to give everything to one who lets it form its kingdom in her soul. Now you must know that just as you find present in the divine Fiat the creation of the sovereign lady, and you sing her praises as queen, so did she find you present in the same divine Fiat, and heard your singing. The mamma does not want to be outdone by the daughter. From that time she sang your praises to honor that divine will that was to possess you. And in order to requite your singing, how many times she calls the heavens, the sun, the angels, and everything, to sing the praises of her little daughter, who wants to live in that Fiat that formed all her glory, her greatness, beauty, and happiness. Then I continued my abandonment in the divine Fiat, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, when my divine will reigns in the soul, it takes on the acting and directing role within her. There is not one thing she does in which my divine will does not take on its first act, in order to call its divine act upon the act of the creature. So if she thinks, it forms her first thought, and calls all the sanctity, the beauty, the order of the divine intelligence. And since the creature is incapable, nor does she have sufficient space to receive our intelligence, every time my Fiat does its first act in the intelligence of the creature, with its power it keeps expanding her capacity so as to enclose new divine intelligence in the mind of the creature. Therefore it can be said that, there where it reigns, my will is the first to breathe, the first to palpitate, the first act of the blood circulation, so as to form in the creature its divine breathing, its heartbeat of light, and in the blood circulation the total transformation of its divine will in her soul and in her body. And while it does this, it gives the virtue to the creature, and renders her capable of being able to breathe with the divine breath, palpitate with its heartbeat of light, and feel the whole of its divine life, more than blood, circulate in all her being. Therefore, wherever my will reigns, it is the continuous actor that never ceases to operate. And making itself spectator, it delights in its divine scenes that it itself unfolds in the creature, and she lends her being like matter in its hands, to let it unfold the most beautiful and delightful scenes that my Fiat wants to do in the soul in whom my divine volition dominates and reigns. January 20th, 1935, Volume 33. Living in the divine volition makes the paternity of her Creator felt, and she feels the right to be his daughter. 3 prerogatives that the one who lives in it acquires. My poor mind loses itself in the divine volition, but so much so that I do not know how to repeat what it understands, nor what I experience in that celestial sojourn of the divine Fiat. I only know how to say that I feel the divine paternity, who with all love awaits me in his arms, in order to tell me, "We are like children, and, Father, come to enjoy my paternal tendernesses, my loving manners, my infinite sweetnesses. Let me act as Father to you. There is no greater enjoyment that I could experience than to be able to develop my paternity. And you come without fear, come to give me your daughterhood." Give me the love, the tenderness of daughter. My will being one with yours, it gives to me the paternity toward you, and it gives to you the right of daughter. O divine will, how admirable and powerful you are! You alone have the virtue of uniting whatever distance and dissimilarity with our celestial Father. It seems to me that it is exactly this to live in you, to feel the divine paternity and to feel oneself daughter of the Supreme Being. But while my mind was crowded by so many thoughts about it, my sweet Jesus, making me his brief little visit, told me, "My blessed daughter, it is exactly this to live in my will, to acquire the right of daughter, and God acquires the supremacy, the command, the right of Father. Only he knows how to unite the one and the other together, and form one single life of them. Now you must know that the one who lives in my divine volition acquires 3 prerogatives. The first, right of divine life. Everything that she does is life that she feels. If she loves, she feels the life of love, and as life, she feels it flow in the mind, in the breath, in the heart, in everything. She feels the vital virtue that forms in herself not the act that is subject to ceasing, but the continuation of an act that forms life. If she prays, if she adores, if she makes reparation, she feels the incessant life of prayer, of adoration, of reparation, divine, not human, that is not subject to interruption. In fact, every act done in my will is a vital act that the soul acquires. In it everything is life, and the soul acquires the life of the good that she does in it. What great difference between a good that possesses life and a good or act that, as one does it, the life of that act ends. As life, she has it in her power, and she feels the continuation of the life of that good. On the other hand, as act, she does not have it in her power, nor will she feel the continuation of it. And what is not continuous cannot be called life. And only in my will are these acts full of life found, because for beginning, they have the divine life, which is not subject to ending, and therefore it can give life to everyone and everything. On the other hand, outside of it, all things, even the greatest works, find the end. And oh, what a beautiful prerogative that only my will can give, feeling in the soul her acts changed into perennial divine life. The second. Now to the first prerogative, the second comes forth into the field, that is, the right of property. But who is it that gives her? Who constitutes her owner? My will itself, because in it there is no poverty. Everything is abundance. Abundance of sanctity, abundance of light, abundance of graces, abundance of love. And since she possesses these as life, it is just that she possesses as hers these divine properties of it, such that she feels herself master of the sanctity, master of the light, master of the grace, master of the love, and of all the divine goods. And only in my will is there this mastery. Outside of it, everything is given by measure and without rendering them owners. What a difference between the one and the other! The third. From the second is born the third prerogative, right of glory. There is nothing that she does, little or great, natural or supernatural, that the right of glory is not given to her. Right of glorifying their Creator in everything, even in the breath, in the heartbeat. Right of remaining glorified themselves in the glory of Him from whom there is no glory that does not come from Him. Therefore, in my will you will find everything, and everything at your disposition, and with right, not human but divine, of which my will itself loves to cede these divine rights of it to you, loving the creature as its true daughter. End of January 20th. Fiat.